Hi, I'm Gillian Miller. I'm the Senior Staff Scientist at the Ecology Center, a nonprofit organization in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And this is a collaborative project with the Sierra Club. So I want to acknowledge my co-authors, Jeff Gearhart, Denise Travick-Pointer, Sonia Lunder, and Steve Brown. And a special shout out to Denise and Stephen, who are Sierra Club volunteers and donated their time and great expertise to this project. So if you saw the talk just now from Vista, you know a little bit about biosolids, and we're going to tell you results of tests that we did on those products. And the arrow keys are not advancing the slide.
Go ahead and click on the slide once.
Okay, now it is. So biosolids originate from wastewater treatment plants. They are also called sewage sludge, a less attractive name. But I'm showing a picture of Washington, D.C.'s wastewater treatment plant, which is the source of one of the products in our study. These products are fertilizers made by collecting solids from the treatment plants, going through some processing, drying, and sterilizing, and they are virtually pathogen-free and allowed to be spread on home gardens and cropland. And about half of all biosolids in the US are applied to land. The reason we tested these is that prior research has found PFAS, a number of compounds at greater levels than in non-biosolid-based fertilizers. And this is a significant concern because it's a pathway to our bodies through food. It's probably not surprising that they're contaminated since they are the end product of a lot of industrial waste streams as well as household waste. Land application is known to cause plant uptake of PFAS compounds. Varies greatly by compound and whatnot, but it is then a path to get into our food. There are some pretty devastating examples of dairy farms that had to get rid of all the milk and because of severe contamination from biosolids being spread on the land that grew the food that the cows ate. So that's just one example. There's also a problem with PFAS from biosolids running into surface waters and other waters. We also were interested to compare total organic fluorine with targeted PFAS that we would find in these products. Look at that mass gap. So we tested 9 products and they're listed here. They are from all over the country. We, in many cases, know which municipal treatment plant the solids come from, and in a couple cases we don't. In red is the percentage of the product that is biosolids. All but 2 were 100%. Milorganite is the name of the oldest product of this type in the US, and it's from Milwaukee's water reclamation process. And this is a screenshot just to give you a sense of how these products are marketed. We applied 3 tests to all of the products using 2 contract labs. SGS did an isotope dilution, LC-MS method, analyzing 33 PFAS compounds. They also did a total oxidizable precursor or TOP assay to compare those pre and post results. Galbraith Labs did a total fluorine assay by oxygen flask combustion, and they also did inorganic fluoride so that we could essentially subtract that number out to look at just organic fluorine. We included a blinded duplicate sample, which showed good replicability for all of the methods, with one kind of minor exception for one compound. I'll start with the total fluorine results. These are the products listed in alphabetical order. The one in bold box is the duplicate, 2 samples from the same. You'll see the inorganic fluoride is very low compared to the total fluorine. So most of that number that we're seeing for total fluorine is fluorochemicals that are organic or polymers. We don't know what they are, but that's what we're interested in. We believe a good portion of these are PFAS of one type or another. The SGF work had these target analytes, and for simplicity of displaying, we've divided them into 5 subclasses written across the top there. FASAs are perfluoroalkane sulfonamido substances. Then we have the fluoropolymer sulfonic acids. Then we have the perfluorinated sulfonic acids and the perfluorinated carboxylic acids and the ether PFAS. To give you a glance of what was found, anything in red was detected in at least 1 product, oftentimes in multiple products. And in gray, were not detected in any products. So the only one of these subclasses with nothing detected was the ether PFAS, which includes Gen X, the common replacement for PFOA as a processing aid in fluoropolymer production. This chart shows LC-MS results with concentration on the y-axis and products across the bottom, using showing the 4 subclasses that were detected. And if you see the yellow and green parts of the columns are the subclasses that are polyfluorinated. So those may oxidize or transform in the environment to fully fluorinated, very persistent compounds. The orange and blue parts of the columns are the perfluoroalkane sulfonic acids and carboxylic acids, which are a variety of fully fluorinated highly persistent compounds. It's difficult to put these numbers in any kind of context because biosolid products are not regulated in most places, but there are screening levels in Maine, the state of Maine, so we have put those here for comparison. They regulate just 3 of the compounds for biosolids in order to be applied to land. So we've shown PFOA and PFOS results from the products we tested and how those compare. If the square is shaded red, it would not pass Maine's screening level. If it's shaded green, it would pass. The upshot is that 8 out of the 9 products would not be able to pass those screening limits, largely because of PFOS. The top assay, this shows, again, concentration on the y-axis with the products across the bottom, but this time we have the preoxidation results compared to the postoxidation. The short columns are the preoxidation results, and the tall ones are postoxidation because you get more compounds. So you'll see that the yellow and green parts of the columns on the short columns disappear in the tall columns because those polyfluorinated compounds have been oxidized into fully fluorinated PFAS chemicals, particularly the PFCAs, and that is essentially what we would expect. So there's a 2 to 8-fold increase in the targeted compound sum for these products, which reflects the so-called PFAS precursor chemicals that we couldn't detect in the original analysis. Taking those 3 different techniques together to compare the numbers, we have total fluorine, again, around 10,000 to a couple 100,000 parts per billion for total organic fluorine, I should say. The PFAS compounds only account for some tens up to a few hundred parts per billion of that number. And that's even post-oxidation, even getting at some of those initially untargeted compounds. So the upshot is the missing missing fluorine, organic fluorine mass is at least 99%. We expect these being biosolids with so many different sources going into them. I'm sure there are fluoropolymer little pieces in these products, PTFE and others. And I also wanted to mention side chain fluorotelomere polymers, which are getting a little more attention recently in environmental samples because they're used on a lot of consumer products. Some of our research looked at children's car seats, and some of the textiles were coated with a stain proofing treatment using those type of polymers. Sometimes the backbone is a polyurethane. The main ingredients of Scotchgard, for example, have those compounds. So that's something that could be in these products as well. For the last few slides, I wanted to show a little bit about reducing PFAS and biosolids using the state of Michigan as an example. Michigan used its existing industrial pretreatment program for wastewater treatment plants under the Clean Water Act to make a big difference in the PFOS that was getting into those plants and therefore into surface waters and also into biosolids. So the state required municipal wastewater treatment plants across the state to find out if they were passing through just the 2 C8 compounds, PFOS and PFOA, and if found, to mitigate the sources. They found that PFOS was the big problem, and it was getting into the treatment plants. A lot of it was from landfill leachate that had industrial waste. Quite a few were metal finishers doing chrome plating, and the fume suppressant contains PFOS. There were contaminated sites from AFFF firefighting foam and some types of manufacturing. The chart on this slide is all content from the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and they reported this to show the results of that intervention for PFOS. So they have wastewater treatment plant names listed in the first column. Second 2 columns show you the highest measured PFOS in the effluent in the last couple of years, compared to the November 2020 measurement in the effluent, which is much less for many of them. In some cases, pretty drastically reduced. And then the action taken shows generally what was done to mitigate this PFOS flowing into the treatment plants. A lot of them were using treatment at the source, filtration at the various industrial sources. Some of these were chrome platers, like I said, others landfill leachate. And then there were a couple other things like eliminating leaking AFFF firefighting foam up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. There was a fire and rescue facility that had leaking floors, and those were sealed up. That made a difference in that case. There are, of course, limits to taking this approach to mitigating PFAS. For one thing, GAC did successfully reduce PFOS, but we know that it doesn't retain short-chain PFAS nearly as well. There's probably a lot of breakthrough of that. And then filtering means that you have contaminated filter media, and you have to do something with it. So it has to be regularly changed out in the first place to keep working. And then that needs to be either regenerated by burning or disposed of. And all of those options have problems. They all can lead the PFAS to get back into the cycle, potentially. Incineration, there's been not enough research yet, but it may release unknown PFAS into the air from incomplete combustion. And landfills, while they might contain that filter media better, will eventually start leaking, and you could end up perpetuating the cycle again. So we believe that that ideally, to stop this cycle, upstream sources need to be cut off wherever possible. So take it further upstream, use non-PFAS alternatives in industrial processes for firefighting foam, and keep only currently unavoidable uses of PFAS. So to summarize, in 9 biosolid products meant for home gardeners or lawns, we found a variety of PFAS compounds. Even more precursor chemicals were indicated by the top assay, about 2 to 8-fold higher, and the targeted PFAS accounted for less than 1% of organic fluorine in the products. We showed an example of types of interventions that can work, such as states might be able to use existing laws, as Michigan did, to eliminate the flow into wastewater from industrial dischargers, doing things like cleaning equipment, adding filtration. But preferred and ultimately the solution needs to involve eliminating unavoidable uses of PFAS in processes and in products. With that, I want to thank our volunteers and our funders.
Thanks. So we do have a couple minutes for questions. So Lee.
Any thoughts on how to look for fluoropolymers if they might make up some of the missing mass?
That is a great question, and that, let's see. I think there's some mass spectrometric techniques that, it's difficult to get, of course, pieces of polymer into gas phase, but there may be ways to do that. I think that's a great question that I could probably come back to on because I think about it a lot. Yes, thank you. Pyrolysis, so you can break apart the large molecules and see pieces of them. I think that's the idea there. And so there certainly aren't any standardized methods. And if they're at low levels, yeah, that's challenging. Certainly for larger pieces of like microplastics, even FTIR can determine polymer types if they've been filtered out and separated.